Hey everybody, welcome back to Cityscape Brewing. I'm Dennis Fields, and today we're talking about another brew day. And when I was thinking about what I wanted to brew, I wasn't quite sure the style that I wanted to brew. But recently I was given a ginormous 11-pound bag of Pink Boots hop pellets. 11 pounds I was able to give a lot away to some friends, but it's their 2020 blend. And if you're not familiar with Pink Boots, Yakima Chief Hops partnered with the Pink Boot Society, and the Pink Boot Society basically helps women get into everything fermented, into the beer brewing industry, writing about beer brewing and hop and craft beer, that kind of thing, and empowers women in the movement that's primarily majority men. And every year the blend is a little bit different. And so I have the 2020 blend of the Pink Boots, and this one has several different hops. But as I was looking at the hop blend, I was trying to figure out a good recipe that I could really bring out the characteristics of this hop blend. And so rather than kind of masking it with a bunch of other hops, what I decided to do was kind of my version of a smash beer, where I'm only going to be using this blend of hops, but I'm going to be doing it with a base malt of Pilsner. And then because I kind of wanted to make it a hazy juicy, just given all of the different hops that are in it, I'm going to be using Flaked Wheat and Flaked Oats in the recipe as well. And then I'm going to be pitching a hazy yeast, in this case London Fog ale yeast, to ferment. And so we're going to go through this. Most of these hop additions are going to be in a whirlpool and then dry hopping. I am going to do a 5-minute addition, but most of them, again, as a hazy would be, you would be dry hopping and whirlpooling most of your hops to get all of those oils out of the hops and add that juiciness to the New England IPA. So with that, we're going to go grab our water. We're going to mill our grains, but first, grab a home brew, and we'll be back after this. All right, now that our strike water is all heated up, we're going to go ahead and mash in our grains. Because this is a hazy, I am adding some oats and flaked wheat, and so I am going to add some rice hulls. I'm not going to add a full pound. I'm probably only going to about a half of this pack, which is about a half pound. And put those in first. Since there's not very many oats and flaked wheat, but we're going to add those. This is a pound of flaked wheat. So I'm going to get that in there. The bag opens. I have my pound of oats, which, by the way, you can just buy, old-fashioned oats at the grocery store. You don't need to buy anything at your homebrew supply store. That is the same thing, rolled oats. That's what I use. I'm also going to add my water additions because I forgot to add that first, but no problem as long as you get it in the mash. So go ahead and add those in there. Give that a stir around real quick here. Add my grains. I'm going to check the temperature and see where we're at. We're shooting it for 152 fermentation temperature. So I'm a little bit over at about 155, 156, and I'm gonna throw in an ice cube. This is something you can do if you think your mash is a little high and you want to lower that down a little bit. I'd rather be a little high because I can do these things. It's hard to add water to get it warmer. So adding this ice cube should drop it a couple of degrees, as hot as this wort is and how much, or hot as this mash is, and as much volume's in here, it should melt that ice cube pretty quick. We're right about 154. I'm gonna leave the lid off and stir this a couple more times, but then we should be right at it. And I will put the lid on and let her sit for 60 minutes. All right, so our Sparge water is finally heated up to 180 degrees. I'm gonna transfer that into a smaller cooler to keep that at 180 degrees. We're gonna do our vorlofing and collect our first runnings, and then we're going to dump that water back in to do our batch Sparge rest for about 15-20 minutes. So we'll do that next. All right, we're gonna give our mash a good stir before we start. I'm also going to check the temperature while I'm at it here just to see how far we came. And it is still right at 152, 151, so that is spot on, perfect. Okay, we're gonna do a little bit of vorlofing and then collect our first runnings. Remember, you don't want to open this very fast, you just want to let it slowly come out and create a nice good grain bed around your screen or false bottom that you have inside of your mash tun. We're going to do this about 3 to 5 times or so until it starts running out really clear. In this case, it's going to be a little cloudy because we're doing a hazy. And then we are going to collect our first runnings right in the kettle. All right, so we collected our first runnings, about 2 1/4 gallons. We're gonna go ahead and do our batch Sparge. So we're gonna grab our heated water to 180 degrees. We're gonna pour it back in the mash tun. Then we're gonna give it a good stir around, and we're gonna let it sit for about 15 or 20 minutes. So this time's a little bit optional. 15 minutes should be about fine. This is gonna help rinse off all those extra sugars off of the grains. And then we will collect our final runnings and start our boil process. All right, so our batch Sparge is almost done. We got it resting for 15 minutes. I'm gonna go ahead and give that a good stir up. We're gonna do the same vorlofing method that we did before, 4 or 5 times, recirculating, and then we're gonna collect our final runnings where we should be about 6.7 gallons or so, and we'll start our boil. All right, so we are done with our second runnings, and we just got to our perfect level of 6.7 gallons. And so we've started our boil process, and we're gonna watch this until it gets close to boiling. But before that, we're gonna give it a good stir and take a hydrometer sample. In this case, I'm gonna be using a refractometer so we can get our gravity reading. So I'm gonna take a medicine dropper. I'm gonna take a little sample of that. Only a couple drops is all you need in that. As we get close to boil, I'm gonna be using this, which is firm cap, which will help prevent boilovers as we get closer to the boil. So we'll watch that. Once it gets close, we'll put about a teaspoon or so of this in there, and then we will start our boil process for 60 minutes. All right, guys, now that our boil has started, we're gonna set that clock for 60 minutes. We're going to clean and sanitize a fermenter and any transfer equipment that we need. We're also gonna start doing our hop additions. In this case, we're doing 1 at 5 minutes at 1 ounce of Pink Boots, and then we're gonna do 3.5 ounces at Whirlpool, where we're gonna cool it down to 170, and we're gonna let it sit for 15 minutes instead of recirculating like you would do normally at a brewery. And then the rest of it's going into dry hop. So go ahead and get your sanitizer, make sure your fermenter's all good, grab a beer, and we'll get to it. All right, guys, so I'm also gonna be using my DIY hop spider. If you haven't seen the video on how to make one of these things, super cheap, super easy, I'll put that in the link description. Because I'm using so many hops, I don't wanna use my other hop spider, which is a mesh screen, because it will get clogged up with that many hops. But using these paint strainer bags in the DIY hop spider, which I'm gonna throw in there now, will allow me to get a lot more surface area, and it won't clog up that mesh bag as much, and I can take all of those and just toss them out when I'm done, rather than cleaning all of that when it's pretty clogged up. All right, so we're about about 5 minutes left in the boil here. I'm gonna go ahead and add my first hop additions. Again, we're using all Pink Boots hops. It's the Pink Boots 2020 blend. This is 1 ounce at 5 minutes. I'm gonna put those in the hop spider. Make sure they all drop down out of there. And then once we get done with this in about 5 minutes, we're gonna put it in our wort chiller in here. We're gonna cool it down to 170 degrees, which will not take very long. And then we are going to let it sit with another 3.5 ounces sitting in there for 15 minutes as kind of a Whirlpool hop addition. It's not gonna take very long to get to 170. And so we're gonna stop it right when that does that. I'm gonna pull the wort chiller back out, and then I'm gonna add my hops and let it sit with a cover over it for about 15 minutes. All right, I'm gonna stop it right there. Again, it only took about, I don't know what, a minute. I'm gonna pull this guy back out. You could probably leave it in there, but I'm just for the sake pulling it out. Put my hop spider back in there, and I'm gonna grab my Whirlpool additions, which is 3.5 ounces, again, Pink Boots. Make sure all those get in the hop spider. This will catch all them little guys. I'm gonna move that up and down. And I'm gonna stir around the bag. I'm gonna let that sit for a while. It's just under 170 right there. So I'm okay if it drops a little bit, but I want it to sit about like this for about 10-15 minutes. All right, so it has been about 15 minutes. I'm gonna take the lid off of that, and then I'm gonna lift up and stir around the hops before I put the immersion chiller back in. I'm gonna go ahead and lift that up. I take the paddle, I put it underneath this thing, drain all those oils out a few times, make sure that those all have gotten out of the hop spider. And then stir around the wort really good. And then we're gonna go ahead and continue cooling this thing down. If you don't have an immersion chiller, check out the immersion chiller video that I'm gonna do next week. Immersion chiller video on my page. All right, so we have our wort here. It is cooled off under 80 degrees anyway. It'll finish cooling off as we're kind of transferring it. And that'll be about pitching temperature. We're gonna throw it in my fermentation chamber. Aeration is really important when you pitch your yeast. You want that oxygen right away for the yeast to be able to do its thing. And then after that, you want to eliminate oxygen. So right away, that's really important for the yeast to replicate and to start doing their thing. And then they'll create CO2, get rid of all that oxygen. And then after that, it's really important, especially for hazies, to not have any more hop particles, or excuse me, oxidation. All right, and last but not least, before we go ahead and pitch our yeast, I'm gonna go ahead and grab a last hydrometer sample. I'm gonna put that off to the side. Grab a little sample for that guy. I have a tilt hydrometer I'm gonna throw in there as well, so I'm gonna go ahead and sanitize this. This is really important also for hazies, for the tilt hydrometer, because I can kind of tell I'm gonna dry hop this thing during active fermentation, probably when it hits about 10-20-ish. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my tilt hydrometer readings, and when that gets under about 1030, 1025-ish, I'm gonna pitch all my hops. And so I don't have to take any hydrometer readings or see. Now you can kind of eyeball it, but you want it to be about 70% done with fermentation before you pitch all of your dry hopping during a hazy. And so just FYI, that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna loosen this up, put my harness on. Actually, I'm gonna leave that off because I gotta pitch my yeast yet. And then we're gonna put this in my fermentation chamber, pitch our yeast, and we're done for the day. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and pitch our yeast. I sanitized some scissors. I opened our package with some sanitized scissors here. We're gonna go ahead and take the airlock out, open our cap here, and dump in the yeast. All right, guys, that's gonna do it for the hazy video. We have one more thing to do. I'm gonna take my last hydrometer reading for the night. This is gonna give us our original gravity for the pink boots. And put a couple dabs here on our refractometer, and I'm gonna see what we're supposed to be at. Looks like the expected original gravity is at 1061. And we're just underneath there at 1059, so that's okay. We're a little bit short on the pre-boil and the post-boil, and that's okay. So we're gonna record that, and we're gonna let that sit until it hits about 70% done with the fermentation, and then we're gonna add our dry hop. And in this case, we're going to be adding, I think we're doing 5 ounces of dry hops, and that's a lot. So we're gonna bomb this thing with dry hops. And then we're gonna sit this thing. I normally do a secondary for most of my beers, but for hazies, I don't. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna dry hop this thing, and then I'm gonna wait until it's fully done with fermentation. Then I'm gonna take my dry hops out, I'm gonna pull them out, and then I'm gonna cold crash it using my Cold Crash Guardian. And so then the cold crash will help push all that down and solidify on the bottom before I transfer it to the keg, and then the keg will further do that. But that'll reduce any hop burn that you get with hazy IPAs. A lot of people have that issue right away until it settles down in the keg. Doing this step with the Cold Crash Guardian, crashing it first, helps reduce that hop burn, if you will, in hazies. And so hope you learned something at this process. Try a hazy IPA and try different hops. This one I'm using, I've never used before. I'm gonna try it out, and at the end of the day, we're gonna make beer. So hope you learned something. Put any comments, questions in the comment section below. I love the questions, like the feedback, it's great. With that, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Helps me tremendously, helps out the channel. And with that, happy brewing and cheers.